Everyone, today we're going to take a look at this 2023 BMW i4 M50. The i4 is BMW's new electric compact sedan. It's essentially an electric version of the 4 Series Gran Coupe, which itself is a swoopy 4-door coupe version of the 3 Series compact sedan. There are 2 different versions of the i4. On the lower end is the i4 eDrive 40. That's the more mainstream offering. And on the upper end is the i4 M50 here. Think of the M50 as like a mid-tier performance model. It's like M performance. So it's not extreme, but it's not mainstream. Somewhere in the middle in terms of performance. This one makes 537 horsepower and 487 pounds-feet of torque. So it's kind of funny to suggest that it's not even BMW's top tier of performance, but either way, it's ridiculously fast. I've got some specs here. I'm kind of new to electric vehicles. I've been in this world for quite a while, but this is the first full EV that I've reviewed, so bear with me. 0 to 60 comes in 3.7 seconds. I'm looking forward to demonstrating that later. The battery is 83.9 kilowatt hours with DC fast charge compatibility of up to 200 kilowatts, and it offers, well, I should back up. The M50 with 19-inch wheels offers 270 miles of range, while the M50 with 20-inch wheels only offers 227 miles of range. So you lose, what, 43 miles of range if you opt for 20-inch wheels over 19-inch wheels. This one has 20-inch wheels, so according to the EPA, it's rated for 227 miles, although when I've unplugged it after charging it fully, it's said closer to 250 miles of range on the dashboard, so that's a bit of a gray area, but overall range is pretty good out of this vehicle, as is performance, as is overall design, at least in my opinion. So let's do a little tour of the new BMW i4 M50 here and then take it out for a little drive. So what's most interesting about the i4 is that it's really just an electric 4 Series Gran Coupe, and that means it does have the big kidney snout. This was quite controversial when it first came out. I always argue, though, that bold new car designs take a while to get used to, and well, the snout hasn't really bothered me this week like it might have a year and a half ago when this design was new. Like I said, this one has 20-inch wheels. They're a rather intricate design. You can see there are black and silver elements to them. We'll take a look at the headlights. There's a blue design element on the headlights there, and then there is a blue ring around the BMW emblem. There is a little M badge within the kidney grille. You'll notice the kidneys aren't for ventilation in the case of the i4. There are actually sensors up here, and then there's a camera right in the middle. No front trunk on the i4. I blame that on, again, this being essentially an electrified version of the 4 Series, so this isn't a purpose-built EV platform, and hence they didn't engineer a trunk into the front. You open this hood, and given that this one's all-wheel drive, there's a motor and a bunch of other stuff under there. It's really ugly, no room for storage though. Moving down the side, you've got black mirror caps. There is a rather small sunroof up top by today's standards, at least. Moving down the back, here is your charging port. So as I mentioned, you've got AC and DC. Well, DC fast charge compatibility. I've just been charging off the wall outlet in my garage. Moving around back, badging is as follows. So i4 on the left, there's your BMW roundel with a blue ring around it, and then there's your M50 badge. My favorite design element is that the 4 Series Gran Coupe is a hatchback. So a lot of vehicles have this swoopy coupe design these days, but they still just have a basic trunk around back, which limits their functionality. Not the 4 Series Gran Coupe though. BMW has invested and spent the extra money and engineering dollars to integrate a true hatchback, which adds a lot of functionality. As for the trunk area, you've got some storage. So there's a net with storage on either side there. There's a little hook integrated right here, kind of a flimsy design, and then there is a 12-volt outlet right there. And there is kind of a cargo cover, so this piece stays fixed when the hatch goes up, and then this is another cargo cover bit that goes up with the rest of the hatch. And of course, it is power operated. Here's the key, traditional BMW key. So you've got unlock at the top there. Lock is the BMW roundel. Push there for trunk release, and then push and hold there for panic. Okay, let's take a look at the window sticker. So you can see this is a 2022 BMW i4 M50. And in parentheses there, it says 20-inch wheels because, again, that does have an impact on range. But as equipped, this one comes in at $77,070 when you factor in a $995 destination charge. It's rare these days that we see a destination charge of under $1,000. According to the EPA, the i4 M50 with 20-inch wheels is rated at 80 miles per gallon E and offers up to 227 miles of range. But again, I've seen figures of greater than that on the vehicle's onboard range estimator. Final point of assembly for the i4 is Munich, Germany. Turn things on here. Not a lot happens when you turn it on because there's no combustion engine to kick on. But you can see BMW's most modern dashboard design, which incorporates this single pane infotainment and gauge cluster panel here. So you can see this is all one piece. It's just a big long rectangle. It houses a fully digital gauge cluster and a pretty big widescreen infotainment system. It is a touchscreen, which is nice. So you've got the option of just touching, poking around with your finger if you want to get real specific. But then there's also a control down here. And overall, it's pretty easy to use. The UI is maybe a little bit more complicated than I think it needs to be, but as far as controlling it, it's relatively intuitive. I really like Mercedes-Benz modern approach to infotainment, and I don't think this unseats that in my book. I think Mercedes-Benz is still probably best, but this isn't terrible and would never deter me from buying a BMW. Beyond that, the interior here is pretty clean. I felt like BMW interiors recently are maybe a little bit derivative of generations past. I've felt for a few years now that they should take a clean slate approach to their next generation interior. They've kind of done that here. Overall, it works for me. I like the colors, I like the shapes, I like the layout. I don't love that we've routed all of the climate controls through the infotainment system. So you can see this is just a volume. We still get a volume knob, so that's nice, although I'd like to see the volume knob right here. But we've got forward and back, and then defrost and hazards. Those are the only buttons that are at the base of this dashboard here. All the climate stuff, you have to touch climate to bring it up and then adjust your fan speed, and there's your sync button. The sync button's really small. The heated seats, it's kind of awkward to get to them. You have to lean forward a little bit. So I don't love that, but again, it hasn't pushed me over the edge into disliking this system. These are just kind of minor annoyances, I guess. Overall, though, I like this interior. I think the colors they've chosen are really nice. I think the surfaces all feel pretty good. The steering wheel is pretty thick. You can see some M stitching in the wheel there. There's your light blue, dark blue, and red in that stitching. Kind of odd to be in a BMW performance car that doesn't have paddle shifters. As I've been driving around this week, I've found myself reaching for the paddle shifters, only to be reminded that this isn't that kind of car. There's obviously no transmission or no traditional transmission in an electric vehicle. As far as the center console goes, there is some storage under this panel right here. So wireless charging pad, USB-A, which is a bummer on a new vehicle design like this, but either way, cup holders, 12 volt, yeah, no USB-C port up there. Would like to see that. Here is your center console storage. So we do have a USB-C port in the center console box. So at least there's USB-C somewhere in this cockpit. There are a few different drive modes. So you've got, well, you default to comfort. Let's go into drive, and you can cycle from comfort to sport, changes the gauge cluster a little bit. Then there is an Eco Pro mode. Let's zoom in on the sport mode a little bit. So there's 3 different levels of sport mode. So sport, sport boost, and then sport individual. Let's bring up some car related stuff. when it comes to different settings. So vehicle apps, driving settings. This is an interesting one. So there is adjustability to the regenerative braking. I've got it on low. You can set it to high. And in that case, you let your foot off the gas and the vehicle slows down pretty aggressively. I like it in low though, because it kind of gives you a little bit of a headache when the car is slowing down so much every time you let off the gas. And then there is this iconic sounds mode. You'll hear that in a minute. Apparently the sounds for this vehicle were designed by Hans Zimmer, but either way, you can turn this on and off. It's kind of an electric vehicle engine note. Of course, it's artificial. Additionally, there are some settings for driver assistance and of course, charging. I think that about covers the front seating area. Let's go ahead, I'll put the car in park first. Let's go ahead and check out the rear. So not a lot of space back here. This is considered a compact sedan. There's where the seat is when I'm driving. I'm about 5'10", 5'11", and you can see I really don't have much room to sit comfortably behind myself. I have barely, probably about half an index finger worth of space between my knee and the driver's seat back. My feet are really wedged under the seat there. This is my least favorite part. I could tolerate the knee room, but I feel really claustrophobic down here. I have to kind of jam my feet in. And then there's still a transmission hump, which I really don't understand. I imagine that has to do with the fact that this vehicle is built not on a dedicated EV platform, but rather shares its bones with the internal combustion propelled BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe. On the back of the center console, there are two USB-C ports, so kind of odd. The only USB-A port in the vehicle is up front there underneath the dashboard. Then there's a USB-C port in the center console box, two on the back of the center console. There are some independent HVAC controls on the back of the center console as well, in addition to a pair of air vents there. Then there are map pockets or nets on both the driver and passenger seat back. Over top, you've got a light. Like I said, the sunroof isn't enormous, but it's pretty big, just not a modern panoramic sunroof like you find on some vehicles. And then here is the fold down center armrest with, an overly complicated cup holder, because what would a German car be without an overly complicated cup holder? And then just to reiterate, practicality of a hatchback is really nice. If you needed to haul something big, whatever that may be, you could take out these cargo covers back here, fold the seats down, and you've got a lot of cargo room. Yeah, not a ton of space. Okay, going for a drive in the new BMW i4 M50. I know electric cars have been on the market for a while now, but it's still surreal as someone who owns a gas-powered vehicle. It's surreal to get behind the wheel of one of these because it's dead quiet, and just the way the vehicle behaves, it's similar to a gas car for the most part, but it's also different. It's just really unique. So as I mentioned before, 0 to 60 comes in 3.7 seconds. And again, it's different than in a gas-powered car that goes from 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. I mean, the torque is instant. It would give you a headache to do too many acceleration pulls back to back to back in this vehicle because it's just so blisteringly fast. We are in normal mode, or comfort mode rather. Let's do one acceleration pull in comfort mode, and then we'll do one in the more intense sport mode. There's 50, there's 60, there's 67 miles per hour within like 100 yards of pulling out onto this street there. So, I mean, you can just watch. It hurts a little bit. It feels like my brain and my eyeballs are left way back there while my body, along with the car, are just shooting forward at such a ridiculous rate. I don't know if you can hear that acceleration tone. It's artificial, but it does kind of sound like a spaceship. It's kind of fun. It doesn't bother me. I turned it off before and then I turned it back on, and I haven't turned it off since. It is nice to have some audible feedback as you're driving a vehicle that inherently doesn't make any noise. Okay, so we are first in line at a red light here. We are in sport boost mode. Jeez, that was 60 miles per hour. So yeah, 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. Totally believable. I wouldn't be surprised if it were even faster than that. Again, I just went to reach for a paddle shifter. Old habits die hard. Oh, nice turning radius. Jeez. I mean, just going from 45 to 55. This is different. This is a whole different experience. So the M50 here does come with an adaptive suspension. It gets M performance brakes. It gets M performance steering. So it is different than the regular i4. It's not just battery or acceleration that changes. It's some hardware as well. Okay, let's come out of sport boost and go back into comfort mode. Yeah, that sport mode is jarring. But what I like about this car is that, yes, it does have an electric powertrain, but beyond that, it's just a regular old BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe. So you get all the practicality of the hatchback, you get a relatively familiar dashboard and center console, and all the materials and the hardware come from BMW, which is a company that's been around for 100 years, so they know what they're doing when it comes to designing hardware and designing cars in general. So you have all that consistency and familiarity there. You just happen to have a completely different and modern electric powertrain. It's so smooth and so quiet. I do like the tone. Like I said, you can turn it off. I don't feel a need to though. First speed bump, we took it about 15 miles per hour. This isn't a vehicle that I want to test speed bumps in. Second speed bump, took that at about 25. Car felt really smooth. I have to think that adaptive suspension played a role in smoothing us out after we went over that speed bump. Big speed bump coming up. Let's do 23. Yeah, I think I can feel the adaptive suspension at work, and it does make a difference. Every vehicle I review, I take over those speed bumps, and I can tell when a car levels itself out quickly after going over the bump. And this car does that. Steering feels pretty good. I mean, this is a BMW that is ridiculously smooth, ridiculously fast, and silent the entire time. Backup camera is pretty good. Maybe a little bit distorted at the edges, so I wouldn't say it's the best backup camera out there, but it's still pretty good. It's not bad, and there are some really bad backup cameras on the market. Completely silent. Okay, so there is our look. There is our look at the new BMW i4, BMW's new compact electric sedan or hatchback, whatever you want to call it. I know there are some reviewers out there that focus solely on EVs. There are some that have a lot more experience with EVs than me, so forgive me if this is more of a car review than an EV review. But I do think there's some utility to that. I think a lot of people who would be buying the i4 would be coming from another BMW and purchasing their first electric BMW. And I think what will appeal to those people is that, like I kind of said before, this is a BMW that just happens to have an electric powertrain. And I think as we move forward, that'll be the norm. This era of weird looking and really quirky and unique electric cars, I think will be just that. I think it'll be an era. I think within the next few years, you'll see more mainstream vehicles. Like we've got the Ford F-150 Lightning. We've got the i4 here. We've got the Chevrolet Bolt. You'll see more mainstream vehicle form factors adopt electric powertrains. And I think that's going to make this more approachable for people. I think that's what will ultimately lead to adoption and will lead to the transition toward electric vehicles, because that appears to be where things are headed. As far as the i4 goes, competitors that I can think of are like the Kia EV6, I guess to a degree the Mustang Mach-E, you've got the Tesla Model 3, and then I'm sure we'll have some others on the market soon enough. But what's interesting even about that is we're in this era where the BMW here has a competitor theoretically from Ford, from Kia. So we're no longer at market saturation when it comes to these EVs. And for that reason, you've got some kind of quirky alignments. You've got luxury vehicles competing with mainstream vehicles on the grounds that they're all electric. As far as the i4 goes, ridiculously fast, super quiet, super smooth. I think that probably applies to most electric vehicles. The interior is nice. I don't mind this new infotainment setup. I think it's pretty good. So I think that about sums up the i4. As far as specs and everything goes, I'll put it this way. This is average to above average in terms of range, charging capability, charging speed, and then just overall experience and configurability. And then the car itself is also really nice because, again, BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe just happens to be electric. Thanks for watching.